for you back then. But the MMPI was delivered in terms of how you're doing right now. And she, on the response style scales that I talked about earlier, she showed a slight tendency to underreport, to deny unusual experiences, although she did that in a way that was pretty sophisticated. She's a bright woman. And so given this, we kind of take into account a little bit the fact that she might be underreporting a little bit in terms of what's really wrong with her. However, there are a number of what we call clinical scales on this test, and she was not elevated on any of them, meaning that she's not actively symptomatic in many areas or in great distress in certain ways. But there was one scale that is elevated, and that is the suicide and death ideation scale, thinking about suicide and death. And I should say that Ms. Clancy has been on 1-to-1 suicide precautions, which is the highest level of precautions that a hospital can take, since she came to Tewksbury. This is a very long time to be on that kind of precautions, and what it says to me is that she was at risk for suicide, she remains at risk for suicide, and so she still is. The Adverse Childhood Experience Questionnaire I mentioned earlier, basically it's a measure of whether somebody is reporting experiencing as a child or adolescent adverse or traumatic events, and she was not, so she had a 0 on that. There were 2 measures of suicide intent. One is called Beck's Suicide Intent Scale, and the other is called the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale.
Use the Columbia mainly.
And I can sum up those results very quickly by saying that when she responded to one of them as she would have if she'd been filling it out in January of 2023, what it suggested is that this was a very serious suicide attempt at that time. And when she responded to both of them as she feels right now, she also was indicating that she remains at high risk for suicide, and hence the 1-to-1 supervision for 3.5 years. The brief symptom inventory is something where you ask people about a number of possible symptoms that they've been experiencing within the last month or so. Gave it to her under 2 circumstances. One is, how are you doing right now? That is around April of this year. And the other was, how are you doing in January of 2023? Her description of how she was doing in January of 2023 is that she endorsed feeling blue or still extremely depressed, feeling no interest in things, thoughts of death or dying, feeling hopeless about the future, feeling very self-conscious with others, and the idea that something is wrong with her mind. She thought depression, suspiciousness, memory problems, problems with attention and concentration, and things like she was having trouble concentrating, so she'd be cooking, for instance, and she'd forget what step she was on. So most of these are consistent with symptoms of depression, and so I thought that they were good indications that she was endorsing feelings of depression, although she was improving somewhat from her December feelings.
Dr. Halburn has got to get to the point.
Something called the Obsessional Beliefs Questionnaire has 3 scales.
He got to get to the point.
One scale is kind kind of responsibility threat estimation, which is a belief about your personal responsibility and overestimation of threats. She was not elevated on that. A second was perfectionism and certainty. She was not elevated on that either, although she works hard and so on, but she was not elevated on the perfectionist aspect of this test right now. However, she was elevated on something called importance and control of thoughts, meaning that for her, it's always been important to be able to work hard and control what's going on with her mind and her life. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes that I think was making her depressed and hopeless and sad and so on is that she had been trying very hard since October to basically control the problems that she was having, and it wasn't working. It was not succeeding for her.
That's why she took
Okay, and then there was something called the Mahoney-Slade hallucination scale.
Were her stressors.
And so she endorsed the following things. Sometimes a passing thought will seem so real it frightens me. Sometimes I get distracted trying to concentrate on my work. That was something she endorsed back in 22 and 23.
You guys can hear me, correct?
In the past, I've had the experience of hearing a person's voice and then found there was no one there. That was only on January 24th. I often hear a voice speaking my thoughts aloud, again, only on January 24th. I've been troubled by hearing voices in my head, again, only on January 24th. All right, so those were the psychological testing results, and I'm going to move to the last item on the PowerPoint here, which is why it was important for me to consider her motivation for killing her children. And this is something that, if you look at Lindsay Clancy, would be described as so out of character that I just like to know what could possibly have been going on. Because, for instance, when I talked to her and talked to her husband as well about how do you discipline your kids, it was never spanking, it was never hands-on, it was never anything like that. They both felt bad when they yelled at the kids. So it was one of those things that to imagine her doing something like this is really seems so out of character that I thought it was very important to try to figure out why it might have happened. So this is how I approached it. The other thing about the why question is it could well be something that is valuable to know when we're thinking about whether she understood that something was wrong, or when she was thinking about whether she could conform her conduct to the requirements of the law or control herself. The why question seemed important. So if I could have the next slide.
Sure. And in evaluating the why, did you come up with two possible explanations?
I did, yes, which is on this slide.
And so can you explain that, please?
I can, yes. There are a number of reasons in my experience why people harm one another, why people kill one another. And most of these reasons ended up not applying to Miss Clancy. I mean, it wasn't job-related. She wasn't in the military or the police. Didn't have to do with money or property or fame or anger or being callous or abusive or being afraid or doing it himself. None of those there was any evidence for. But there were a couple of things that started to have some evidence for, and this is what it looked like. One is the psychosis, the possibility that she had a severe mental illness, experiencing hallucinations, delusions, that sort of thing. And as part of that, on January 24th, experienced those symptoms that we're going to talk about in a minute. And I'm calling that the first bullet point there, acute psychosis with command hallucinations. The second possible explanation was as part of an attempt to take one's own life, as part of a suicide, one might harm one's children if you thought that would prevent them from suffering. And let me see if I can give you an example of that. If one of us were to learn, and we had no doubt in our mind that the Holocaust was coming tomorrow, and we thought that was going to be awful, and I can't live through that, and so I'm going to take my own life. If I had children, the question might come up, do I take them with me? Do I take their lives as well? Now, I'm not saying that I would definitely do that, but what I'm saying is that it would come up as a possibility in what I thought about. And so there ended up being, in my mind, two possible explanations for why she did what she did. The first being the acute psychosis with command hallucinations, and the second being this was a serious suicide attempt, and she wanted the children to be with her so she wouldn't be separated from them, and so they wouldn't have to suffer after she was gone. Now, in a minute, I'm going to talk about the evidence that I saw supporting each of those, but I will tell you right now, in advance of talking about that most of the evidence that I saw supported the second one and not the first.
And so, Doctor, if we could go to the next slide and you could tell us what evidence you saw for acute psychosis with command hallucinations. Yes.
The first was, that's what she said. I asked her that question, and that's the way she explained it happened. She said, sometime on the afternoon of January 24th, 2023, that she heard a voice, and the voice said, "This is your last chance. You have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself." If she actually heard a voice like that, that would be evidence of psychosis being experienced and what we call command hallucinations, where the voice is instructing her to do something. There were some other possible things that made me think that it could be a severe mental illness that she was experiencing, and two in particular. One was thinking that others might know her thoughts. Now, this is something that is a symptom of psychosis called thought broadcasting if it's experienced in a certain way. In thought broadcasting, if I'm experiencing that, I literally have the idea that if I'm thinking it, you can hear what I'm saying, just as if I were putting it on the television or podcast or a movie or whatever. It's just coming out that way. I asked her about that, and she said, and other people asked her about that too, and she said it was not thought broadcasting, but these were very vivid thoughts, and she thought that it might be that people could hear them as vivid and strong as they were. The second possible symptom is that thinking police might take her children. Now, in some of the records I saw people saying, "Wow, this looks like a paranoid delusion to me." And I will tell you that it didn't look either paranoid or like a delusion to me. And here's why. I'm a healthcare professional, and that means that in Pennsylvania and every other state I know, I'm a mandated reporter. If someone tells me in therapy or in an assessment that they think that a child is going to be injured or severely hurt or that might happen, then I'm required by law to contact Childline in Pennsylvania. Ms. Clancy is a labor and delivery nurse. She's a healthcare professional as well. And so it's one of those things where if she had said to a psychiatrist, psychologist, anyone providing treatment, that she thought she was experiencing ideas like she might harm her kids, she would know as a mandated reporter that they were legally required to report that. Now, that might not mean that the police would literally come and take her kids away, but it would mean that there would be an investigation. She would have to answer questions, and it might be that for a period of time she would be separated from the children.
And Doctor, is it?
Well, can she answer?
I thought he was done.
I don't know.
Well, we'll find out. Were you done?
I just want to ask a follow-up question about your last point. Is that okay?
Oh, yes, that's okay.
Brett
And so
thinks this is good for
you
him. That's
mentioned
why he
you
wants
didn't
him
think
to
it was a
continue.
delusion. Is it true that a delusion is a fixed false belief?
Yes, that's the way it's defined.
And so Ms. Clancy, thinking that if someone knew she thought of harming her kids might be taken away, that's not a false belief, correct?
Well, that was what I was trying to say, is that it is not a false belief. It's quite possible that it could come to pass.
And if you could continue with your discussion of why the evidence you saw for acute psychosis.
Yes. The other point there at the bottom is that it's appealing as an explanation because it could explain acts that seem so out of character for her. You don't have to get complicated at all. It's just, I had a psychotic episode. I heard a voice. The voice told me to do something terrible. I did it.
And after considering the evidence for acute psychosis, command hallucinations, did you then consider evidence against acute psychosis with command hallucinations?
I did, yes.
And what did you see?
One of the reasons, well, the first bullet point here is that the way she described this as happening is that she heard a voice that she'd never heard before, experienced an hallucination, and she's never experienced it since, but she only experienced it for the 18 minutes or so that it took to kill the children. And to put it mildly, that would be a very, very unusual pattern or manifestation of how this kind of thing comes about. Very unusual. I've been doing this kind of evaluation for many, many years, and I'm always very careful when someone tells me that they experienced a symptom only during the course of committing an offense.
Why is that, doctor? Why are you careful when someone tells you that they only experience this voice during a criminal offense?
Well, because it provides a convenient way of lessening your own culpability. I mean, it's always rare, whereas an explanation for
He said it.
for why somebody did
He
something,
said it.
somebody might look at that and say it's a convenient way of somebody looks at me and it's I don't have the same culpability that I would otherwise.
And what was the next part of evidence that you saw against acute psychosis?
There was some discussion of whether this was postpartum, and so she was about 8 months away from having given birth to Callan, her youngest child, and most of the explanations or most of the sources of authority like DSM-5 or the Cleveland Clinic will point to maybe 1 month after birth or 2 months after birth or something like that. But the farther away you get time-wise from the birth, the less likely it is under those kinds of authority to be postpartum. Now, it could be something else. And there were certainly some things that I saw that were symptoms of depression and other sorts of things that she experienced in January. But it was, given the time, it was less likely, I thought, to be postpartum. Then the next bullet was inconsistencies in her account. To me, when asked about this, she said, the voice said, "This is your last chance. You have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself." And it just kept repeating that, and only that, for about 18 minutes, or the duration of the time it took to do this. There were other times, though, for instance, when she was in the hospital after this happened and was talking to a psychiatric attending, when she said that the voice had said other things, for example, the children will suffer without you, or you have to take the kids with you, or things like that. So inconsistency is important because it suggests inaccuracy. In other words, which version is accurate? Is it the first? Is it the second? Is it neither? I mean, here it couldn't be both, because she said, "I only heard this." To some people she said that, and then "I heard this plus this." To other people she said that.
And doctor, if she had said to a third person that it was a different version, such as, "You have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself because there's a danger to you and the kids," would that be a further consideration of the inconsistencies?
Objection.
Yeah, overruled. Yes.
The more inconsistency there is.
Can we have a basis for that, at least?
Go ahead.
The
What's
test-
this asked as a hypothetical?
Hypothetical, yes.
I'll allow that.
So it's not based on evidence, it's a hypothetical.
It's a hypothetical.
Okay.
You might have to repeat the question.
So if the person has a third version of what happened, what the voice said, and what the reasons the voice gave, would that be important in your assessment as well regarding inconsistency?
Objection. It's speculation, it's not based on evidence, and there's no foundation for a hypothetical question.
Why don't you just ask it as the hypothetical? You know, assuming this, and then go that way.
Doctor, a hypothetical question for you. Assuming that a person has already given two versions of a voice, what the voice said for them to do, and then gives a third version of what the voice told them to do, would that be significant to you in assessing the inconsistencies?
Objection for the record.
Yeah, overruled. Go ahead.
What I would say is the more inconsistency there is, the more problematic I find it to take any one particular account and say this is the accurate one.
And then what other evidence did you find against acute psychosis?
Lindsay, you going your ass to jail. No more hospital for you.
There is some research that's been conducted on malingered hallucinations, which are accounts of hallucinations that are exaggerated or fabricated. And I found it useful to look at that research and see what it suggested and kind of lay it out there in terms of the way she described it. So some research suggests that that one consideration is whether the voices are internal or external, whether they're coming from your own thoughts or whether they're coming from outside of your head. And Ms. Clancy perceived this voice as external, which is more consistent with genuine hallucinations. However, command hallucinations are often, in about 88% of individuals reporting them by one account, accompanied by a related delusion. Ms. Clancy did not report any accompanied delusions. So thus far you've got 1 point for genuine and 1 point for possible exaggerated. Then there's frequency and control. Genuine psychotic hallucinations are more often intermittent than constant. They'll come and they'll go. You'll hear it, stop hearing it. You'll hear it again, stop hearing it, and this can extend over a period of time. Ms. Clancy, in this instance, reported that the voice was constant for 18 to 20 minutes, and then it stopped. It had not been experienced before, and it has not been experienced since. And she also did not report having any control over the voice or over her actions in response to the voice. Then the next item is content. So genuine hallucinations are often familiar, use both genders, and are clear rather than vague. Ms. Clancy described this voice as clear, but it was unfamiliar and it was a single male voice. So that was sort of mixed. I'm not counting it as one direction or another. And then finally, reaction and coping. Individuals who experience hallucinations like this often try to reduce their influence in different ways. Could be praying, could be listening to music. And while those who inaccurately report the experience of such hallucinations often do not describe coping mechanisms. And Ms. Clancy didn't report any attempt to stop the voice or distract herself from it or what have you. So there were about 3 points on which her account more closely resembled exaggerated or fabricated hallucinations. One where it looked more genuine and one that was kind of mixed.
If I could ask you a question, you said that there were more points indicating malingering or exaggerating the existence of the voice. But earlier you testified about your psychological testing of Ms. Clancy, and it showed minimization, and it didn't show malingering. Could you explain how those two things could occur in the same person at the same time?
Yes. When we try to appraise through testing or specialized measures something that looks like malingering or exaggeration, the way we typically do it as psychologists who develop the measures is it looks like somebody who is going to take a shotgun approach. They're going to say unusual things are wrong and strange things are wrong and many things are wrong and things like that. If you do that, we're pretty good at picking up that shotgun approach to malingering. But if I ask you a bunch of questions and you answer them almost entirely in a genuine way, that you're being as accurate as you can, except with one exception, when I ask you about one experience or one symptom and you exaggerate or fabricate that, it's we can't pick that up through our testing. So what we have to do instead is we have to kind of develop our ideas about how it might have been experienced, what it was consistent with, what the disorder is. We take a broader approach, which is what I've tried to do in talking about this.
We'll go to the next slide, please. And was there further evidence against acute psychosis?
Yes. I'm going to start with the question of thoughts or hallucinations. I've already said that I found the account of hallucinations to be, as she described it, it would be very, very unusual to experience it that way. Never having, not before, not since, constantly for 18 minutes. However, if this was a thought, an unwelcome, intrusive thought, but still a thought, that's basically this is your last chance, you have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself, then that would be consistent with thoughts that she'd been experiencing for some time. She'd been having thoughts about harming herself, that she was, it was going to be very difficult for her to do this in a way that was that made sense. She was experiencing thoughts about hurting herself because her brain might have been damaged. She was experiencing thoughts about hurting the kids. She was experiencing all sorts of unwelcome thoughts. If that were the case on January 24th, if these were thoughts, then that would be consistent with what she'd been experiencing for months before. So that was something that made more sense to me, that rather than an auditory hallucination, it would have been an unwelcome, intrusive thought. The next bullet is her response to her husband's question, what did you do? So when he got home around 6 p.m. on January 24th, and the house was quiet, and he went in, thought people might have been playing hide and seek with him, called downstairs, didn't get an answer, called upstairs, didn't get an answer, went upstairs, found the bedroom door locked, unlocked it with his key, went in, saw some blood there, saw the window was open, ran downstairs, and he saw his wife Lindsay lying there semi-conscious. And he said his first question was, what did you do? And her response was, I tried to kill myself. Now, I thought that if she had actually experienced this command hallucination, that she might have said something like, I did what I had to do, or I did what the voice said, or something like that. But no, she said, I tried to kill myself. And this is consistent with my looking at this and starting from the perspective of this is a serious, highly lethal suicide attempt. And that's the way to understand it. And then the last bullet point has to do with the recovery of memories. So when she regained consciousness that night in the hospital, one of the things she said is that she wasn't able to remember what had happened.
Let him talk.
And she was informed of it, but if this had been a genuine memory loss, then human memory is funny. And one of the things that happens is that when you're trying to remember something that actually happened, things can interfere with that. Things that you read, things that you're told, other sorts of things like that. So it would have been hard to understand how she would recover that memory accurately, including the particular memory of the command auditory hallucination when it said.
And Doctor, did you already go over the first bullet point, the inconsistencies in her description of knowing wrongfulness?
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one. Go to the next slide.
Okay, you don't have that's not a consideration?
Well, there were some additional inconsistencies in terms of whether she knew that when I asked her whether she was aware that it was illegal or immoral, she said basically, I wasn't thinking about this at all. No thoughts, no decisions, none of that. It was just all action. One of the things that Dr. Resnick wrote in his report is that she was intellectually aware that it was wrong or illegal, but not morally. And what she said to me is that I just don't think I wasn't thinking about that at all. I didn't know any of that.
Okay. And if we could go to the next slide, I think if you could describe for us the evidence that you saw for suicide combined with altruistic filicide.
Yeah. Altruistic filicide is a term that's used that means killing your kids out of love. Not because you're trying to be cruel or for material gain or because you want them out of your lives or any of that, but killing them out of love so that you could basically, they wouldn't have to suffer, so you could prevent their suffering. And what she did, I thought, was begin with what I said a minute ago was a highly lethal and very serious suicide attempt.
And that was preceded
It
by
was preceded by months of thoughts and impulses about you should harm yourself, you should kill yourself, your brain is damaged, that sort of thing. And that, I think, is the beginning of the way to understand what happened that day. The second point is that, as I've said before, she didn't like to leave her children. Whether that was for date night or school or going back to work or anything, she did not like to leave her children. And if she had taken her own life, then her children would have been without her, and she thought that they would suffer. And she'd been having these thoughts both about herself and about her children over a several-month period. And the other thing that I will say is that she was in pain. She was suffering. She was doing a little bit better than she had been before she went into McLean. But she was still in pain. She was suffering. I think she was even desperate. And that is something that is often characterized as people who try to take their own life. They're in pain, they're suffering, and they're trying to put a stop to it. And I think when she decided at some point that she was going to put a stop to it, then she had to answer the question of what to do about the kids. And she didn't want to leave them, and she was convinced that they would suffer without her.
For the next slide. And further evidence that you saw for the suicide combined with altruistic filicide?
There was. One of the things that she said when asked about what happened is that in the course of strangling each child, she said, "Go to God, baby, go to God." And that was part of her expectation, that she and the children would be together in heaven with God. She was raised as a Catholic, and this, as I understand, Catholic considerations, that's not necessarily what happens, but when I asked her about that, when I said, "Isn't suicide a mortal sin?"
Yeah, can I see counsel over here?
The prosecutor is going to cause a mistrial if she keeps letting people go on with the religion and the sins. You can't do it, apparently. Why, I don't know, but you can't do it. You can't do it. She had it good right there. She shouldn't have went down that. She should have said, "You can't say that." She should have stopped him, because this shit could be a mistrial and Lindsay could get 2-3 more years. Apparently in the court of law, you can't bring up religion during a trial. She had him going, but she needs to, he is talking and he's explaining, but she needs to let him get to the point. And she should have stopped him when he started talking about religion. She should have stopped him there, because now Red could say, "You know what? This is twice mistrial. I want a mistrial." And the judge seems pissed. Like, prosecution, you got her. Like, you got her. It's clear as day she didn't hear a voice and that she made that shit up to get out of this criminal responsibility, to get away with killing her kids for whatever reason. She was suicidal. She didn't want to live with the kids. Whatever. She knows it was wrong. You got her. You have got to move along before you cause a mistrial here at the end of this trial. It's like, you got to reel him in and just get him to the criminal responsibility. Just get him to that. And if Red wants to cross-examine him and try to break it all down, he got his notes. I think he'll do fine with that. But letting him just go on, it went from, you got it, to now, fuck, it could be a mistrial, because this is twice with the religion. And the judge wants to drag it out because it's almost time for his, it's almost time for him to go home. So we know how he rolls. And hopefully, the prosecutor, Sprague, is in there telling the judge, listen, she said, go to God. This is what she said. He's just explaining that, but you got to think Attorney Reddington has been getting his way and he knows he's losing. I mean, this man told a whole story. It's been like for 2.5 hours now where he covered all bases. I'm sorry, but Dr. Halburn he knows his shit, and he is intriguing because you can hear a pin drop in there when this man is talking. It's so quiet. Everyone is in there waiting to hear what this psychologist is going to say next, because he has been the best witness in this whole trial when it comes to experts. He is clear. He's not biased. I mean, he's not saying probably what we're all thinking. This woman has a personality disorder. You know what I'm saying? So he put a little bit of razzle dazzle in there. He's not downplaying what she was going through, but he's saying she made it up. She made up the male voice. It didn't happen. Like, that didn't happen. But he's not trying to say she wasn't depressed at all. She wasn't suicidal at all. He's, Red can't really tear him up because he's acknowledging that. But he is not. He's making it clear. She was not psychotic. She knows right from wrong. She knows what she's doing. She knew what she was doing. And that's all the prosecution needs to prove. They don't need to prove you're a bad mother. You're this, you weren't really depressed. You don't really have bipolar. No. They need to prove that you knew what you were doing in that moment, and this, I heard a man's voice, is bullshit.
All right, and so I'm going to ask you to go back to the jury room, and then we'll bring you back in a couple of minutes. All right?
Court, all rise.
I knew it. Damn, Attorney Sprague, why you didn't stop him? Jesus Christ, you're doing good. Slow it down. You know that they already on you about the religion. Ah, fuck.
Next is the forum. Court's in session.
All right, we'll be in a short recess, and I'll come out as soon as I can.
Court.
Oh, they messed up the fucking They messed up the trial. They're going to get a mistrial. They're going to get a mistrial. They're going to get a mistrial. Attorney Sprague should have known better. She should have known better. She should have known better once he started going. She should have stopped him. She should have known better. You had her right there. You had her. Why, oh why would you allow him to start talking about sins and all that? She should have stopped him right there. Like, you can't talk about that. Move on to the next thing. Oh my God. This is no good. This is no good. And it happened twice in the trial. So they're going to try to go for mistrial. Commonwealth, this is no good. She should have stopped the man right there. No matter what the chaplain said, no matter what anybody else said, they already know that the judge warned them about religion once. Once they realized once he said Catholic, she should have said, stop, you can't. She should have stopped her witness from saying that. You're at the end. These rebuttal witnesses didn't even have to come on. Like, you had enough to get your guilty verdict. I don't understand. If there's a mistrial here, Red is going to be way more prepared the next time around. The chaplain did not say in the Catholic religion. She didn't say that. She just said, Lindsay said, go with God. He was on the right path until he said in the Catholic religion. You cannot use the religion. And you can't say anything about it being a sin or this. You can't say anything about that. So the prosecutor, Buckingham, said that earlier to Sue Clancy. And now here we go again. Lindsay's gonna get another 3 years in the state hospital doing her interviews, and I can't deal. The judge is ready for this to be over anyway. I strongly think he doesn't want a verdict coming under him. He seems nervous. He really can't, he can't come to decisions without going sidebar. He's late. He's taking breaks. He's wasting people's time. I think that this is what he wants. He's waiting for his opportunity to get from under this, especially since he just had a case like this overturned. I think that the judge is like, okay, this is my way out. Wow. Oh man, I'm so disappointed in Attorney Sprague. I really am. She let him talk too much. She did not stop him and reel him in the beginning on certain things. So he went on this storytelling run, and then when it ran into the religion thing, he's been status quo with just running on and on and on and on. So he just went down this, and bam. But he's been testifying in trials. He should know better. He should know better. He's been testifying in trials. He should know better. But they should have been hyper vigilant about that because they already got in trouble for bringing up the mortal sins. They should have known better than this. The judge wants his break anyway. I'm telling you, I believe the judge wants out. I believe that he wants out because of the way this case has turned, just been wild. I don't know. The judge gonna come back at 3:50 and say, why don't we break until tomorrow? Let's drag this out just a little bit more. So we're definitely not gonna hear closing arguments. I would not even say by Wednesday, because Reddington is going to go around and around and around for a couple of hours with this witness. It's going to drag into tomorrow. Then the next witness is going to take another 4 to 6 hours. Then we're going to be looking at closing arguments Wednesday. Maybe the jury will start deliberating by Wednesday. And most judges, they handle what they need to handle right there from the bench. Like, this judge got to do too much referring. Then when I find out he's not just a criminal judge, you could be in there fighting for back rent and he could be the judge too for that. So he's not just strictly with that type of criminal law. And, I'm like, I feel like he's not confident. He's not confident enough to make a decision. He's all over the place. He's literally all over the place. Like, he got to figure it out. He's not sure of himself. He's not like a confident judge. He has to come to the side and see what they're both saying. He don't just say, this is what it is, because this law versus this versus that. He got to try to figure it out too much. He's not really confident. He's just not. Some judges sit on there and they're like, nope, overruled because of this. But they're ready, and if they don't have to come to the side and he's trying to be a mediator, rather than laying down the law as a judge in his own court. He's probably back there, like you said, in his law books, trying to figure out what it is. Sprague should have reeled in the doctor a little bit. Like, doctor, get to the point here of these, you gotta wean it down a little bit. You let him go on a storytelling mission from the beginning, so he just kept on with his same status quo. I'm telling the stories here. And then look, we fell down into a 12-foot hole. Rather than guiding him, you let him just keep walking, and then he fell into a hole. You had her with him saying why she wasn't psychotic. She should have went over his test. They should have prepped these witnesses. Like, I don't need you to go on a rant about she killed them because she loved them and the suicide. And we don't need that. We just need you to say, was she psychotic? That's it. We didn't ask you for a motive. That was left field. He didn't need to bring that in. We're not asking why you think it was a motive. We all have our opinions on why she did it. You know what I'm saying? And only she will ever truly know. She didn't ask you for, there had to be a motive. Yeah, how about she just had a personality disorder? You know what I mean? Did Ted Bundy have a motive? I mean, I don't understand. He should have left that part out. And we would never have fell into the hole. Wow. This is not good. And the judge is going to take his time because he's going to take his time. And we're not even going to get to the boom. It's almost 4 o'clock. The judge is going to take his time and tell everybody to come back tomorrow. That's what he's going to do. Mark my words. Absolutely terrible. Terrible. Sheesh. Attorney Sprague. Why? And she's my favorite. I don't understand why she let this go on this way. He's been on the stand since like 10:40. It's 3 o'clock. Just telling stories here. I get it, but, he added a lot in there that his reasons for her motives. You're just up there solely to say whether she knew what she was doing and was criminally responsible. You went too far here. It was going too far, man. Oh, God. Yeah, I need Judge Sullivan out. I'm telling you, I found out this week that he's also the judge if you trying to get back rent. Like civil, he could be civil, he could be... So it's like, this is who y'all thought to put on a national trial? He's nervous. He takes a lot of breaks. He doesn't have respect for the jurors' time. They've been there like a month now. This is week 4, right? Or is this week 5? I think it's week 4. I definitely get the points he was trying to make. He's trying to tell the story. I think he's trying to make his testimony ironclad because he know Red is up there trying to discredit people and ruin their reputations, which could essentially hurt, their career and mess up their money flow. But you're not an expert to try to figure out a motive, right? You're just up there to determine whether she was psychotic or not and whether she knew what she was doing so she can be criminally responsible. That's it. He should have never added the razzle dazzle about the motive and she loved her kids and she this and that. That's just what she said or how she acted. We don't know if she had a personality disorder, she was playing a role, and deep down in her mind she really hated those kids. So you really can't speak to that. But you can speak to the command hallucinations being a farce, and this being malingering. But you can't really speak to if Lindsay really loved those kids because you don't really know what she was really thinking. You know, to love her hoe. Lindsay would love a mistrial, right? Because then she gets... And Attorney Sprague looked like... You see when they was going, but she looked like, oh, man. You know. You should have known better than that. Like, you should have stopped him when he was going down that road. You should have stopped him. Should have stopped the man. Yeah, Sprague was like, it's like, but soon as you already know that has been the center of a lot of controversy, that comment, you know, they're talking about all the law and crime everywhere, all over the news, you know, they were speaking about this happening and about, you know, they should get disciplined from the bar and things like that. So as soon as anyone would even attempt to say that as your witness, you should have stopped them. I'm very confused as to why she didn't stop Dr. You know, and this is her own witness. He wouldn't have overtalked her. He would have stopped. Say, you can't bring that up. On to the next. And he was saying just what, I mean, it was intense. He was saying exactly what, very clearly, about how Lindsay was faking about this voice and how she wasn't psychotic. And then he took a left turn into motive and fell right into a 10-foot hole. And now look it. Her best witness might have caused a mistrial. What are we watching right here? Wow. And the judge wants any reason to stall. And it's the end of the day too. He doesn't want to be sitting up there. You know, he just doesn't. I mean, look how long he was on lunch. Like, just you know, the judge is not the best judge, not the most confident judge, I feel. Like, honestly. That's how I feel about the judge. Wow. And he's going to give Attorney Reddington the time that he needs to do his cross so he can start fresh tomorrow after he goes and tries to dig up some dirt on how, you know, it's like, I'm over Judge Sullivan and his breaks. Like, is he the only judge in Massachusetts? Wow. Today was emotional. I was hoping for the 2 rebuttal witnesses and done. They spent too much time with Dr. Mack. That was once again a circus. Reddington spent too much time on Dr. Mack, asking the same questions, going in circles, arguing with him about the DSM-5 as if he wrote it. That was just enough. And then we get Halburn on the stand. He's non-biased. He's just giving his good opinion. He's clear, but he's in storytelling mode versus testifying mode. And it was working until it wasn't. You know what I mean? It was working until it wasn't. Then it just got weird. It just got weird. This has been an emotional day. Emotional day. And the judge is running down the clock on purpose. Let me act like this bothering me so much so I could burn 30 minutes. Probably back there with his feet kicked up, might not be looking at nothing. This judge, he likes his breaks. I don't think he's went to 4:01 not one day. He is trained. 11 o'clock, 4:01, I'm done. 15-minute recess is an hour. Hour lunch is an hour and 45 minutes. It's just crazy. I'm sure those jurors want to get out of there. I'm sure they don't want to be getting $50 a day to sit there almost a month out of work. Imagine having to use your PTO time, to get paid because you're sitting on this jury. Crazy. There we go.
This court is back in session. Please be seated.
Your Honor, for the purpose of the record, we return back to the trial of Commonwealth versus Lindsay Clancy. All parties are present, excluding the jury.
All right. After the following sidebar conference, I think the defendant made a motion. I'm going to allow argument in regards to the motion. I'll hear first from the defendant, and then I will hear from the Commonwealth. Mr. Reddington.
Thank you, Judge. Your Honor, this has been obviously a long trial and a lot of work on the part of everybody involved, from the court to the staff to the prosecutors to myself, and needless to say, the strain on Lindsay Clancy. I have to move for a mistrial reluctantly. The reason is that this is intentional misconduct on the part of the prosecution. You know that this whole idea of injecting Roman Catholic faith, the concept of mortal sin, into this trial occurred, I don't even remember now, about a week ago, and I objected, but before I could get the objection out, Your Honor had us at the sidebar at the same time, and very forcefully, in my opinion, indicated to the jurors that they should not consider that to any degree. At the time, I put on record the fact that I did not feel that I felt that the court's instructions were sufficient. They were forceful. They were right on point. And we moved forward without a motion for a mistrial. I made a tactical decision. But unfortunately, at this point, it's a concern I have because this is just over the top. It's the same thing again, talking about religion, talking about heaven, talking about killing people and the impact of the effect that it would have on Lindsay as well as her children. The fact that this is not the first time that it occurred during the trial, and the prosecution has previously brought up the concept of mortal sin, based on your ruling in the past, in conjunction with the fact that they brought it up again, I believe it was intentional misconduct, and I feel that the court should grant the motion for mistrial.
All right, thank you. Kamala?
Thank you, Your Honor. The question I asked the witness did not ask for any testimony about religion, about Catholicism, about mortal sins, or anything like that. And the slide is still up on the screen. There's nothing on the slide about Catholicism, about mortal sins, about any of that. The witness was explaining his reasoning. I don't think it was intentional on part of the witness either. If we look at his interview of Ms. Clancy, one of the things that this witness has to do is determine whether the defendant knew the wrongfulness of her conduct. And that can be either that it was criminally wrong or morally wrong. And he explored that with her in the interview and asked her about whether she knew it was legally wrong, and she said she had no concept of legal consequences. And then he went on to ask her about moral wrongfulness and about her religion and whether she knew it was morally wrong, and she did say that she had knowledge that suicide was considered sinful. So I believe that's where the witness was going in trying to explain his reasoning. I don't think he was intentionally trying to inflame the jury or cause an issue in this case. I know I certainly wasn't, because I didn't ask a question about her religion or a question that would invoke that kind of response. I asked him to explain what was on the slides, and that's not on the slides. So there was no intentional conduct by the Commonwealth. That was not where I intended to go with this questioning, and I don't think that the witness intended to do any harm either. He was just explaining his rationale. So I would ask that the jury be instructed to disregard the answer, and I can speak to the witness and tell him not to talk about that reasoning for behind his thoughts, that he can testify about his conclusions, but to leave that portion of his reasoning out of his testimony.
All right. Well, here's a concern I have, is what the witness did say. In regards to go to God, baby, go to God. That was statements that had been made in evidence already. And then he indicated that was part of her expectation, that she and the children would be together in heaven with God. All right. Now we're getting a little closer to problematic area. Then he testified she was raised as a Catholic. And as I understand Catholic considerations, that's not necessarily what happens. How is any of that proper at this point? But it was not, I'm not going to declare a mistrial at this time. What I am going to do is I'm going to bring the jury in. I'm going to tell them to disregard it. I'm going to tell them that's an inappropriate area of inquiry, and that this witness's understanding of Catholic dogma or Catholic teaching is irrelevant. There's no evidence of his background or training or having been to the seminary or any of that. And so I think, and that's where he injected that. And so I am giving that, but the Commonwealth, I'm going to strongly, and perhaps the strongest language, talk to him and let him know that he can't go into that. And then my thought is, I'm going to bring the jury back in. I'm going to give them that instruction, and then I'm going to send them home. I don't want them leaving here today with the last thing they heard was a discussion about this witness's understanding of the Catholic teaching. That's not the last thing they're going to hear. And so my thought is that as best I can is to address that and minimize the damage or prejudice, because I do presume that this jury will be able to follow those instructions. And so that would be my thought. We'll come back. That will give the Commonwealth plenty of time to talk to this witness, to let him know the areas that he should and should not go into. And then we can come back tomorrow and we can resume his direct examination and cross-examination. All right, so that'd be my thought. We'll bring the jury in. I'll give them that instruction, and then we will recess until tomorrow. Okay?
Your Honor, and just for the record, could I note an objection?
Sure, absolutely. All right, so we ready for the jury?
I felt scared like I was on trial. I'm like, what the hell? She doesn't get to get away with this. Like, Attorney Sprague, this your last warning now. You got her. You don't need to, you got to calm down with your rebuttal witnesses in this Catholic stuff. Stop, please. Skip over any go to God business. Just skip over it. Don't even talk about it. Tell your next witness, we don't even want to talk about the go to God statement. Shit, nobody ain't hear it anyway, because the shit never happened, period. She never said that. She killed those kids and did what she did and wasn't no go to God baby. None of that was in there. It was all fabricated. So leave it off the table. Jesus, this is spilling nerves all up.
Court, all rise. Jurors enter.
I need some green tea. I got to calm down. Whoa. Taking us on this roller coaster. Look at her winking at the camera.
This court's now in session. Please be seated.
For the purpose of the record, we return back to the trial of Commonwealth versus Lindsay Clancy. All parties are present, including the defendant and including the
Whoever winks should be removed
All right.
from the
All right. Well,
courtroom.
members of the jury, just before we broke, there was some testimony from that last witness. And I just want to give you some instructions in regards to that testimony. And I just wanted to let the religion that the defendant was raised with is absolutely an inappropriate area of testimony. It is to be stricken. It is not to be considered. I can't be any more clear of that. It cannot be considered. Secondly, the witness's understanding of Catholic teachings and considerations, again, is immaterial, it's irrelevant, it is to be disregarded based on that testimony. All right? And so, because we had a little bit of a delay due to this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to excuse you until tomorrow. All right? And so the thought is we'll come in, we'll finish up with this witness. I believe the Commonwealth has another witness at that point, and then we'll talk about where we go. I apologize for any kind of confusion or delay, but I just wanted to make sure you
You're
had
always delayed.
those instructions with you when you left here today. All right? So, I'm sorry, so I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Court, all rise. Jurors, kindly close your notebooks. Place on the chairs. This way, please.
Jurors have exited the courtroom. This court's in session. Please be seated.
Hi. Also, one more time, can I see it sidebar?
Wow. We have been through the ringer today. We have been through the ringer today. Sprague had, like I said, she was walking down the path and then fell into a hole. she let him talk too much. That was definitely the problem. Yes, we were intrigued. Yes, he was explaining things clearly, but look, it turned out to be a trap. You need to ask the questions, you need to get an answer, and you need to move along. She let him take the reins too much because he was saying what she wanted to hear and what she wanted the jury to hear. But no, he got to shorten that, because there's no way he should have been testifying for since 10:30 this morning. That's just insane. You know, there's just too much talking going on here. She let him go on and on and on, and it backfired and almost caused a mistrial. Like, you need to ask your questions, get the answer, and then that's it. Not no, oh, he's going all around to get to it, and then he's just talking, and she's letting him talk for 10, 15, 20 minutes before she even interrupts. You can't do that. He's going on, and he felt so comfortable, he started talking about Catholic religion. And he's been doing this for decades, so he knew that that wasn't right as well. No matter, don't bring up the go to God baby no more. Don't bring it up again. Don't even talk about it. Tell your other rebuttal witnesses you don't need to talk about it. You got Lindsay Clancy by the cojones. Do not ruin it now. You know, it's been proven. She wasn't psychotic. You know, I think the jury is going to go your way, but damn, you almost ruined it. You got too overzealous. You know, do your punchlines with your closing argument. Get these rebuttal witnesses, wrap them up. Wrap them up. It's going on too long with the rebuttal witnesses. You know, 6-hour testimony. No, wrap it up, put it in a ball. She's guilty, and let's move along.
All right, so we will be in recess till tomorrow. The anticipation is that the evidence will be done at some point tomorrow, with the thought that most likely we'll have a charge conference sometime probably tomorrow afternoon, and arguments in charge would be on Wednesday. All right, subject to change, as they always are. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Court, all rise.
Nurse gang, there you have it. It almost went left. You know, we were getting into the thick of things, and then ultimately we still have not heard his ultimate, was she criminally responsible? Because he told us a 4.5-hour story. So I know that he probably beefed up his testimony and tried to make every area clearer because he saw what happened to Dr. Mack. And ultimately, these experts are not trying to get in front of this case and the whole world's watching and embarrass themselves or damage their reputations, because this is how they make a living, of course. So I get where he was trying to, and I know that's what he was doing, because he went in detail in the resume, he went in detail in confirmation bias, he went in detail in, Lindsay being patient, being not. He went in detail to acknowledging that she was struggling. But, we even say this in nursing incident reports. You got to write to the detail what people need, what needs to be known, but sometimes talking too much can create pitfalls that you can fall into. And in this case, it almost caused a mistrial because Attorney Sprague let him talk a little bit too much. We don't need to know why you think, what you think her motive can be. That testimony never needed to be in there. What you think, why you think she did it. No, you're here to determine, was she truly psychotic? Did she know what she was doing? You added your own piece in there and shit almost caused a mistrial. So, no, Attorney Sprague should have reeled him in. She was letting him go. She was letting him go because she knew it was giving the jury a clear picture of what they've been trying to say this whole time. Red was letting him go because some parts were looking good for Lindsay, and Red was letting him go because he was like, okay, he's giving me some rope. He's giving me some stuff to work with because he's talking so much. That's why Red wasn't really stopping him. I haven't seen Attorney Reddington this quiet with one of those witnesses in so long. He knew Dr. Kirk was talking too much, and he was going to get something out of that and could have potentially got a mistrial with prejudice. I'm glad the judge said, okay, because of this one simple thing, we're not going to go there, because the judge, the judge has to look at all the evidence as well to see what he's going to do. How should they charge? How should they come up with their decision, the jury, based on the charges, involuntary manslaughter, murder one, whatever the case may be. So that's why he's listening to the evidence, and I'm glad that he's probably saying, like, okay, this is overwhelming. Like, this woman was not psychotic. I'm pretty sure the judge has his mind made up. I mean, let's be clear. Ray Charles could see it. I mean, it's there. She wasn't suicidal. She wasn't homicidal. Psychotic. She made this up. And the idea of this voice was definitely put in her head as a defense by Zeisel. And Dr. Kirk made that very clear. Like, you know, the voices don't just pop up, command you to do one thing, and you jump to it rather than saying, who's this talking to me? What's this voice? She was rational and everything else, but she couldn't resist that voice, you know. So we gotta slow down. We have got to slow down, Attorney Sprague. I know you were getting excited because he was the best witness thus far, but she should have. I don't think they really prepped these experts. They just saw their reports and let them go up. Her motives should have never been a part of it because he really can't confirm that. But his knowledge and his years of experience and expertise can confirm whether she knew what she was doing or whether she's psychotic. You can't confirm what her motive is. You don't know what's going on in her mind. You really don't know. You know what I mean? So that should have been left off. Yeah, and then also Resnick said she intellectually knew. So it's like, and the Commonwealth got Lindsay Clancy. She is going to be found guilty. But these rebuttal witnesses messing up shit. Because the Mac, you know, even though what Mac wasn't saying was right, was wrong, we understand that because we're healthcare professionals. But the lay people think that he seems incompetent. You know what I mean? So it's like the same thing with Reddington's witnesses. You know what I mean? They made his case worse. So I don't want to see that for the prosecution. You gotta reel your, you know, but now since you put on rebuttal witnesses, it looks like it's kind of shaky. It's like, come on, stick to it. Don't ad lib, don't add no extra. Reel Dr. Kirk in. He needs to be asked a question. He needs to answer it. He does not need to be allowed to do story time for 35 minutes. That can't happen because Red is just looking for information. And I don't like the fact that it gives Attorney Reddington